All right, so this is part one of what I hope will be a fairly long series, and maybe it won't be. It'll be every week for a while, but maybe after a while we'll do it occasionally. I want to teach you how to make doll clothes. In the blog post I'll talk a little bit more about this, but basically I asked on the Facebook group what people wanted to see, and one of the suggestions was sewing doll clothes. And that's actually a topic I've wanted to touch on since before I started the channel. So here we are. We're going to make doll clothes. And I'm going to make this so simple that even if you've never stepped in a fabric store and never bought a pattern before, you'll be able to do this. I'm going to walk you through what the fabrics are, what kind of fabrics you're looking for, how to read the pattern envelope, how to read the pattern, how to cut out the fabric. Definitely this is going to be geared towards the absolute beginner, but I'm hoping those of you that have sewn some will pick up some new tips also. If you want to know more about my background in sewing, be sure and check out the blog post. I'll go into a little more detail about where I'm coming from as far as sewing goes, but in the meantime, let's jump into it and let's talk about the two patterns I have hidden down here. Alright, before we start talking about the patterns and looking at them, I want to introduce you to basically my assistant. This is Allison. She's one of my American Girl dolls, and she's the doll I'm going to be fitting the patterns to. So if you've got an American Girl doll, great, that my adjustments will work for you, but I'm going to show you how to measure your own doll and the patterns to make them fit. So this is Allison. You'll be seeing her quite a bit over the next several videos. So here are the two patterns I chose. Let me move the camera down just a little bit. They both happen to be Simplicity patterns, but I chose them out of my pattern collection for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons, one of the big reasons, was I've never sewn these patterns before. They're patterns I had purchased and never even looked at, never opened up. So these are new to me. They're also, as far as I know, they're both still available in the Simplicity Pattern book at your fabric store. So you should, if you want to make the same things I'm making, you should be able to. I want to take you through my process of how I fit a pattern to a specific doll. If I dug out a pattern I've already made before, that wouldn't be very helpful because I've already fit it. This one, I'm going to go through all my steps. A minor reason that I chose these is I tend to choose patterns that have actual photos of the actual garments that are being made in the pattern. And that's the case whether it's doll clothes or real people clothes or home dec patterns, whatever. I gravitate towards those that have photos on them instead of an artist rendering. I just have more confidence in how it's going to look when it's finished. Another reason I chose these two patterns is this one, Simplicity made, they partnered, I guess you would say, with American Girl. They got to use the licensing for American Girl. So I would assume then, and we know how to spell soon, but I would assume that this pattern should fit an American Girl doll straight out of the envelope. We'll measure it and find out. This pattern, the dolls on the cover are not American Girl. I'm not sure. I think they're Journey Girl, but I'm not positive. I don't own any of the specific dolls on the cover, and I don't specifically recognize any of them, but just their general look to me looks like Journey Girl. If you know who these dolls are, any of them, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. Another reason I chose these two patterns. This one, with the exception of the bag, is all for knits. This one is all for woven fabrics. Those are the two main types of fabrics in your fabric store. And I want to be able to guide you through how to pick those fabrics, how to size the patterns for those two types of fabrics, and how to sew them. And this is an easy way to do it. Another thing I really like about these patterns is there's multiple items to make very different outfits. This one says right on it, make 4 outfits, and you've got pants and shorts and a skirt. You've got 4 different tops. They're all probably made with the same pattern pieces for the most part, but they've made them look different, and they show you how to do that. I like that. This one has pants / shorts, skirts, a dress, and some variations on the top, as well as a couple of accessories, the purse and the belt. That gives me more things to work with. By having these 2 patterns, I can get a pretty good wardrobe going very simply and very easily. So let me turn the camera off, and we're going to look at these pattern envelopes one at a time in a lot more detail, and I'm going to explain to you what each part of the envelope is, what the important information is, so hopefully if you've never sewn before, you will be able to confidently look at a pattern envelope and know what you're looking at. Alright, let's start with this envelope. This one is, first thing you notice on the top, at least the first thing I would notice, is it says Simplicity. That's the pattern company, and the number 1178. Why are those important? Well, that's how you find the pattern at the fabric store. You go into a fabric store, and there's 2 ways to get patterns at a fabric store that I know of, at least in the stores I go to. Some of them are like the store I work at, where the patterns are self-serve, which means we have big drawers of patterns that the customers go to the Simplicity drawers. There's a set of drawers just for Simplicity patterns, and they look for the number. They're all in numeric order in there. They're filed just like a filing system. Easy to find, and customers pull their own patterns. We can help you if you get lost and you don't know how to do it, but that's the way we do it at our store. Some stores near me, you walk up to a counter and you tell the person behind the counter, I want Simplicity 1178, and they go and get the pattern out of the drawer for you. You still need the number. So those are important. Right here on this, and then here it says US 1 size, and it has European and French also. And those just tell you it's 1 size. This pattern only comes in 1 size. Some patterns come, you have to choose if you're getting size, 1 size or another size. This one, it only comes 1 size. This pink bar says that it's doll clothes for 18-inch dolls. Okay? You need to know that to make sure you're getting the right size pattern. Then we have the photos of the outfits, and you'll notice next to each photo, or in the case of an artist drawing, next to each artist drawing, there's a letter. This one says A, B, C, D, E, and F. This pattern, each view, it's called view, this is view A is this entire outfit. View B is this entire outfit. That's important when we get to the back and start choosing fabrics and choosing what we want to make and how we want to make it. The other information, it says it was designed and printed in the USA. It has a little flag. It tells a little bit, I believe that's about who drew it. It has the barcode and has Simplicity's website. The main information we've talked about. All right, let's bring this camera down just a little bit. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. And let's look at the back of the envelope. We're going to look at this side because this side is not in English and I can't read it, but I think it's the same as this one. If you read both languages, you can tell me. Once again, we see the pattern number. We see that there are 25 pieces. That means pattern pieces, I believe. And then we have line drawings of the backs of all the garments that were in the photos on the front. On the front, you see the front of the garments. On the back side, there's a line drawing of each and every one of those garments from the back. And we get to see that view A is going to show us how to make a dress and a bag. View B is going to show us how to make a top and a skirt, etc., all the way down the list. And you can refer to that to see what the items are. By comparing that to what you saw here, you really get a better understanding of what you're going to sew. Once again, at the top of the page, it says 18-inch doll clothes. Once again, you're making sure you have the right size. Next, we have a box that says fabrics. That's a really important box to look at when you're picking your pattern and your fabrics. These patterns are designed to fit, made out of specific weights and types of fabric. We're going to talk about that at the end of this video. That's going to be one of the last things we talk about. This one specifically calls for broadcloth, calico, chambray, cotton types, gingham, linen types, poplin, and seersucker. Those fabrics all have one thing in common, a couple of things in common. They are lightweight and they are woven. Those are the two important things to note about those two things. Then there's some variations. There's some things where you can kind of change it up a bit. On A, meaning view A, the bodice and the bag, the bodice is the top of the dress, and then the bag, those two things can be made out of a satin as an alternate. That would make a very pretty dressy dress. And there's variations for other ones in the pattern. So you can check that. You check that before you buy your fabric. It's a good idea to check it before you buy your pattern in case it's going to take you into someplace you're not comfortable sewing. Then each view has a little section here that tells you what you need to purchase for that view. And what it says here is for A, for the bodice and the bag, you need 3/8 of a yard of either 45 or 60-inch fabric. Fabric comes in different widths. We'll talk about that more when we talk about fabrics. The skirt takes a half yard of 45 or 60-inch fabric. And bear with me if I misquote some of what it says. I'm reading upside down. I want you to be able to see it right side up. The dress and the bag lining, you'll need a half yard of 45-inch. It says that because a lot of linings only come in 45-inch fabric. If you happen to have a 60-inch lining, don't worry, it's still good. You can still use it. You'll just have a little more left over. And then notions and trims. In addition to normal sewing supplies like needles and thread and a sewing machine and scissors, you'll also need 2 snaps, 2 ribbon flowers, and 3/4 of an inch or 3/4 of a yard of 3/8 inch wide lacing. And we'll get into all of that, what we need for the patterns that we decide to make. But that information is given for each and every pattern. You'll notice there's little asterisks next to some of these. There's 2 asterisks next to that. If you go to the bottom in little tiny print, there's a version for 1 asterisk means without nap, 2 means with, and 3 means with or without. Nap means fabric that can only be used one way. Nap is technically like velvet, where if you brush it one way it's one color, you brush it the other way, it's a totally different color. But that's also can come into play in print designs. Maybe flowers, where the flowers are all headed one direction. You wouldn't want to make them upside down. So let me turn the camera off, get our other pattern set up, and we'll talk about it. Alright, now it's time to look at our second pattern. I'm going to try to just go briefly over the things we've already talked about in regards to the first pattern and go into more depth on what's different. So again, as simplicity, we have our pattern number 8042, so we can find it at the store. It says it only comes in one size. First big difference is this one has a banner up here that says American Girl with their logo. That tells me that in some way, to some degree, Simplicity and American Girl must have worked together to make this pattern. So that makes me make an assumption, and that assumption is this pattern should fit an American Girl doll with minimal alterations. We'll see when we get it out of the envelope. This one has some line drawings here, kind of the designer's concepts, I guess, of what they thought the garment should look like. And it's just more or less decorative is what that's for. And then there's just some information down here. It says that dyes could accidentally stain your doll, so be careful what kind of colors of fabric you use. It says it's licensed through American Girl. It says it was designed and printed in the U.S. Let's look at the garments. Instead of each outfit being a separate view, each piece is a separate view. View A is just this top. View B is just this top. C, D, E is this pair of little leggings. F, G, and H. So those are split down even further on this pattern. Let's go to the back. I'm going to try to zoom you in slowly so I don't make anyone seasick. Again, the pattern number and the number of pieces in the envelope, and our line drawings of the back. This is where we really see that view A is actually a hoodie jacket and not just a shirt. We see the backs of our garments. Here's something important to note, and it's slightly bold. 18-inch knit doll clothes. That means this pattern is only sized to work with knit fabrics. It means fabrics with a stretch, and we are going to have a segment of this video where I talk about types of fabrics and what that means. Then it goes on to say fabrics sized for stretch knits only, and it gives a list of the types of stretch knits you can use. It also says that the little bag it can be made out of broadcloth or other cotton types. Makes sense. You wouldn't want a bag that stretches out. Again, each view has its own section, and it tells you what amount of fabric you need for each thing. And it tells you what kind of trims you need or notions you need. Like this hoodie takes 5/8 of a yard of 60-inch fabric. Most knits only come in 60-inch fabric, so that's why it says 60-inch. Contrast sleeves, 1/4 yard of 60-inch. You'll need the stuff if you want to do the applique. They've got this nice American Girl star on the front. If you want to do that, you'll need a 3-inch square of felt and another 3-inch square of paper-backed fusible web. That way you can adhere that star on the front. It also says you're going to need 7/8 of a yard of 1/4-inch wide sequins, glitter, glue, and a small paintbrush. We'll get into all that if we do that view, we will look and see what that's all about. And it does the same for each of the other garments. So that, oh, and one more thing. Let's talk about this part up here at the top. There's this black bar followed with an arrow followed by a white bar. When you look at the fabrics needed, it says see pick a knit rule. That's this. What that does is you need to take a piece of knit fabric. I've got one off camera here. I'm going to grab. You fold it with the knit running up and down. You want the crosswise grain. You take it, you pinch it at the beginning of the black bar and at the end, and you stretch. Does it come to the end of the white bar? If it does, it has the amount of stretch it needs. This one barely does, but it will work. Some knits are much stretchier than others, and when I talk about fabrics in a few minutes, that'll be the next segment, I'll go into more detail on knits versus woven fabrics. So that's the information on the back of the envelope and the front of the envelopes. If you have any questions, be sure and post them either in the comments or comments on the blog post or on the Facebook group. You know, anywhere. I check the comments on the videos, I check the comments on the blog, I check the comments on the Facebook group. Facebook is usually the fastest place to get a hold of me, so that's probably the fastest and easiest way to get an answer if you have a question. Let me gather up some fabrics and we'll start talking about fabric choices. Alright, let's talk about fabrics and fabric choices. First off, we're going to talk about knits in our first part here. I'm going to show you my favorite source for solid color knit fabrics, and that is these inexpensive t-shirts. Michaels carries them, Joanne Fabrics carries them. You can get inexpensive t-shirts at places like Walmart and Dollar Tree. Just make sure it's not too flimsy of a shirt. I imagine Hobby Lobby has them. We have a new Hobby Lobby. I haven't gotten there yet, so I don't know, but I bet they have them too. They're sold for decorating on at the craft stores. They're usually a fairly stable knit, but they have enough stretch to use. And what I do, I buy the 2X large when these come on sale in a variety of colors, so I've got lots of colors of solid knits to work with. There's a lot of fabric here, and many times these come on sale for between $2 and $3. Of course, you can buy your knit fabrics by the yard. This is a little remnant of, or leftover piece of, some striped knit I used for a project many years ago. This I would consider not to be a beginner fabric because, as you can see, it stretches a lot. The more a fabric stretches, the harder it is to sew. Intermediate sewers can handle this if they're careful. Advanced sewers should have no problem. Another fabric that would be very difficult, I would call this an advanced fabric. This is a lycra knit, and this is made for like swimsuits, dance wear, skating wear, things like that. It's very slippery because it's shiny. It's very stretchy, and it actually stretches both directions. And it's very lightweight. This is an advanced fabric. If you're just starting out, stay away from this until you learn to sew a bit. And this is some leftover, rather stable, dark red knit that's been in my collection for a long time. I made myself a dress out of this years ago. Love the dress, very comfortable. It's a great fabric to sew with, just as good as those t-shirts. Let's look at some cottons next, and then I have some specialty fabrics that will both work and not work. All right, this one I have here I love this fabric. It's beautiful. Fabric content-wise, weight-wise, it's perfect, but it's out of scale for the doll. If you made a dress out of this, it would just look like it was not the right fabric. This I actually used for a doll bedspread, for an 18-inch doll bed. But for clothing, I wouldn't pick this. It's gorgeous as it is. These are all very suitable. These are all cottons from the fabric store. They're small designs, so they'll be in scale with your doll. They won't be too big. This one is kind of pushing it, but I've used it for lining, and I loved it for that. I love this plaid. It makes a great shirt. The dots, the florals, all of those. These all work. They're a lightweight woven, and they're a woven, which you can tell because they start to unravel. And you can see that the fabrics are literally woven, just like you would do on a loom. Excuse me. Also in the fabric store, you can find something called a fat quarter or a fabric quarter. These are a great resource for doll clothes because a lot of times they'll come on sale very inexpensively. And what they've done, what the manufacturers do when they make these, they cut a ½ yard of fabric off the bolt, and then they split it lengthwise. So you get 2 1/4 yard pieces that are actually a ½ yard long. So the measurement of this is 18 by 21. Fabrics are 40, they're considered 45, but they're anywhere from 41 to 45 inches wide. So these are great for doll clothes that don't need a big, long strip. We'll use some fat quarters in some of our garments. Another woven fabric that I would call more an advanced fabric is this. It's like an organza. It's hard to work with though. This would be used as an overlay. And I don't know if we'll get to use this on this project, but I thought I'd show it anyway. It is difficult to work with. Know that. It is beautiful, but at least an intermediate sewer. For the patterns we're working with today, here's some fleece. This would not work for any of the patterns we're working with on this series. It's simply too thick. You can make a wonderful doll coat out of this as long as the pattern is sized to work with a heavier fabric. But as beautiful as this is, it won't work for what we are doing in this series. Now I'm going to go gather up some of the things we need to have on hand to start our sewing project, and then I'll be back. Alright, let's talk about some of the tools that you're going to need to do your sewing project. First off, I am assuming that we are using a sewing machine. So that's one of our tools. It's too big to bring. An iron. An iron, although not 100% mandatory, will make your project look a lot more finished, and it'll be a lot easier to do your project if you have an iron. Irons, you can buy irons at Walmart, at the sewing store, anywhere. You can start with an inexpensive iron, but you will need an iron, and it should have an adjustable temperature someplace here so that you can adjust the temperature on it. Something I recommend that you purchase is an inexpensive project basket. This is just a basket from the dollar store. I love having these on hand because when I set aside my fabric for a project, I put my pattern, I put all my trims, and I put my fabric and everything in this basket. Then when I get done sewing at the end of the day, I can put everything back in the basket, put it off to the side. When I'm ready to pick up that project, I can just pick it all up at once and take it to the sewing machine or wherever I need to go to work on it. So an inexpensive basket container of some kind to use as a project basket. When you'll need a surface to cut your pattern out on. You're going to cut your fabric and your pattern out. I'm going to be using this. This is a rotary cutting mat. I like it because the table I'm standing at right now is very stained because it's my craft table, so it's got stains and spots on it. You can use any flat surface that's big enough to spread out on. Just make sure it's nice and clean and dry. So you'll need your pattern, which we've already talked about our patterns, and you're going to need a few other tools that I've got in this basket, and a few that I'm just going to talk about. Pins. You need a way of attaching your pattern to your fabric to cut it out, and then a way to hold your seams together until they're sewn. My preference personally is a fairly long pin with a large head. You can see that there. Some people prefer a short pin. My mom always bought pins that were only about that long. She likes short ones. I like a long pin. I can use it very easily, and it's very handy to have on hand. And you're going to need a lot of them, so get a package that has quite a few. You're going to need some sewing shears or sewing scissors. These are used for fabric only. This is an expensive pair that I've had for years and years. You don't need a really expensive pair of sewing shears to start out with. Just have a pair of scissors that are only used for fabric. You can buy them at Walmart or the fabric store. You can get them for around $10 even. But they need to be only used for fabric and ribbon. I also keep a pair of paper scissors near my sewing equipment. This is used to cut my pattern up and cut it into individual pieces. This is what I cut paper with, so these never touch paper. You will need some needles for your sewing machine, a couple of different types, and we'll talk about sizes and types when we work on our project. You're going to need thread to match your project, and I'll talk about that when I talk about getting our first project put together. Your sewing machine will undoubtedly require a bobbin wound with thread to match our project. I like to use this quilting erasable pencil or something similar. Chalk also works to mark different markings that I need to transfer from my pattern to my fabric. A seam ripper, because things don't always go as planned and sometimes you have to take the seam out. A tape measure, so that you can measure your doll, measure your pattern, things like that. This is a nice retractable one. It's nice and handy and easy to use. It doesn't get tangled. You'll also probably need some hand sewing needles, possibly some paper and tape if we need to adjust the pattern very much. Sometimes I scan my pattern pieces and make my adjustments on a copy so that I still have my original pattern the same size. But that's basically what we need, and there'll be pictures of these items on the blog post. I hope that you're finding this series, you will find this series to be helpful. I hope this video has helped you out in getting some confidence to start a project. I look forward to showing you how to cut out an outfit and to sew it. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.